Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the attorney Maislin. Rick, we have got a ton to get to with Bengals training camp underway, the trade deadline in Major League Baseball coming and going, fist fights after TBT games. I mean, we got so much to get to. Let's just get to it.
Let's do it. We are a full week into Bengals training camp. So let's start by taking a look at the top headlines so far a week in. Number one, you got to start with Ja'Marr Chase. He has yet to practice in training camp due to what is believed to be a hold-in over his apparent desire for a lucrative contract extension. You wrote a column titled, "If Chase's hold-in is going to have any effect, he could be willing to miss games." So, Skinny, why don't we start by you taking us through that? It's on local12.com right now if you want to read it.
All right, so he's under contract for 2 more years. This year is the final year of his rookie deal. They picked up his 5th-year option for next year. So there's really no leverage point, right? I mean, other than he thinks maybe he's going to get a groundswell from the fan base that will convince the ownership group, Mike Brown in particular, to go ahead and do the extension. And they still might. I mean, there's a possibility they could. I don't think they're going to. There's no urgency point at the moment because he's under contract. That's kind of how this league works. You have control of a player for so long. You can control him for even another year if they're a first-round draft pick, but it comes at a pretty princely sum, $21.8 million. Then you can franchise tag a guy once or twice, and then you can try to sign him to a contract. Usually, 5th year, if you still like the guy and he's worth it, you're going to go ahead and sign him. I mean, Joe Burrow played through his 4th year, and then they signed him. And so I just don't know what the leverage point is for him. And that's why I pointed out, unless he's willing to take this to the nth degree and just not play during the season. I mean, would it make any sense if 3 weeks from now he finally goes, you know what, I'm going to practice? What did that serve?
Well, we'll talk about what the likelihood is that he actually will sit out. But in terms of what it might serve right now, is there any chance that he's just trying to preserve how many reps he's taken in practice that don't matter to decrease the chance of a silly injury?
Yeah, somewhat. I can see some of that. But let's not forget that at the scouting combine, Dan Pitcher, the offensive coordinator, talked openly about, I'd like to get Ja'Marr in the slot more. Wouldn't you like to see what that looks like? Wouldn't you like to see Joe Burrow, who's not throwing the way Joe Burrow used to throw at the moment? The ball comes out of his hands a little wonky at times, a little different at times. Wouldn't you like to see those two get on some kind of same page? And you can argue, well, they've been playing since LSU. It's a different Joe Burrow at the moment. It just is. And again, if they're going to try to move Ja'Marr around, wouldn't you like to see what that looks like in training camp?
Absolutely, I would. Absolutely, the Bengals would, and I'm sure Joe Burrow would even. But Ja'Marr Chase is the one holding in right now and not participating. Is it possible that just he and his agent are saying, look, we'll play when the lights are on and the games are on the line, but we're not going to go through practice and take the chance of getting hurt during practices? Is that a possibility?
Sure, that is a possibility, but I still don't know what that served other than, to your point, preservation. But
that's the only thing I can see. Now, what do you think the possibility is that he would actually sit out games?
I don't think it's highly likely because, I mean, if you're going to want to get paid, you're going to want to put performance out on the field. But I would tell you this, your risk of injury is far greater in a game than it is in practice.
No question. But I do get guys get hurt every year in training camp, right? I mean, it happens. We've seen guys lost for the year in training camp. So, I mean, there is a non-zero chance that he ends up hurt in practice, even if you're trying to take precautions with him. And I get the standpoint of, look, if you're not going to give me my guaranteed money, then I'm going to try to decrease risk as much as possible. If you want me working in the slot, and you want me working before the season and doing all these extra things, then pay me what a receiver of my value is worth at this time. Now, I'm not saying the Bengals should do that. I really don't think they should. I think the Bengals have all the leverage here. I don't think they've done anything wrong by Ja'Marr Chase to this point. I think the way they've handled this is absolutely fine and absolutely their right. If Ja'Marr Chase and his agent have an issue with that, then figure out a different collective bargaining agreement next time when you're the players go to negotiate that. I mean, really, that's what this comes down to. The Bengals are doing, they don't have a lot of options in terms of what they're allowed to do to extract value when negotiating these contracts with superstar players. One of their options right now is they don't have to guarantee Ja'Marr Chase a ton of money 2 years out from when they actually need to do so.
Yeah, and here's the two-way street of this. And there is a two-way street to this, in my opinion. So to your point, if this is what Ja'Marr is doing, of just saying, I made the point to some people, August 28th feels like the right day. It's the day after cut down day and all of those things that he'll report. That gives him a basically a 2-week ramp up and he's ready to go. And at that point, you're not doing much live stuff because you're kind of preparing for games. You're preparing for the game for the season opener. But the flip side of this is, okay, if he's doing this because he's not, he wants the guaranteed money, all those things. If let's just say the Bengals do extend him, and 2 years into it, he suffers a catastrophic injury and they're on the hook for 3 more years of guaranteed money. Is he going to give that back?
Right.
Should he give that back? Of course not. Right. So there's a risk on the Bengals. While there's a risk for him to play and practice right now, there's a risk for the Bengals to give guaranteed money 3, 4, and 5 years out right now.
Yeah, and that's, as much as typically we always take the player side in these situations, and I think for good reasons in a lot of cases. I mean, who wants to take the side of a billionaire owner when, the players are making millions and they're the ones out there playing on the field and entertaining us and all of that. But I still think there is way too much across all sports, not just the NFL, but across all sports. There's way too much of guy signs contract. And that's always part of the signing the contract is you're deciding when to bet on yourself, right? You're deciding like, do I want to take this guaranteed money right now, even though maybe I'm not at my highest value, or do I want to wait another year? Maybe my value will be even higher and then I'll sign it.
Yeah. Hunter Green's a great example, right?
Perfect example.
The Reds kind of bet on him becoming this ace pitcher. They paid him a nice sum. He felt comfortable in that sum, but he's elevating himself above that. But at the same time, you're now got him locked up for a chunk of time. That's kind of the way, to your point, this works.
Yeah, and it's just frustrating from a fan's perspective that it seems like across all sports, no matter what, if any guy plays well for a year or two, then it's like, you know what? Screw that contract that we signed. I'm now going to hold out, and you either need to trade me or I need a new contract. And to some of that, I get it. It's your leverage. If you play really well, you get to do some of those things, but it's just getting exhausting. It's making it hard to watch sports and enjoy them and enjoy these athletes. It's like, guys, figure out your collective bargaining agreements. And then once you sign your contract, to some extent, that's the contract. Like, you got to play that out a little bit.
Yeah, Trey Hendrickson, shut up. I mean, trade me. Right? Trade me or I'll retire. You're not going to retire. What are we talking about, guy? They just extended you. They just gave you more money. So you didn't have to sign that deal then. You could have said, no, I'm good. I'm going to play out this contract and then try to get more money. No, you said, I like what you're giving me now. I'm going to take it. Okay, then shut up and play.
Yeah, Trey Hendrickson was way worse because he's at least already making big time money.
Yeah.
Like Jamar Chase's situation is a little bit different because he's still making that rookie scale money while being a clear-cut superstar in the NFL. But as you pointed out, I mean, next year that's going to change. It's not like this is a forever thing for him. And I understand the injury risk, but I think it's frustrating for Bengals fans. I think ultimately it's not going to be a very big deal in this season's storylines because probably like you said, right before the season starts, he'll be back and he'll play in games, I think. One thing I am interested in, though, I try to listen to everyone else's content that covers the team. I obviously like everyone who covers the Bengals. I didn't hear anyone else talking about the potential for Jamar Chase to sit out when training camp started a week or two ago. Yet on our show, you randomly said that. It was the first I had heard of it. You said it, and I was like, what? Why would that happen? And then sure enough, it's been the biggest storyline in training camp for the last week. Where did that come from? Why did you know that was going to happen?
Seeing what he did in mini camp and just knowing the situation the way I kind of know it. It had that vibe of this is him going to try to make a statement. The fact that the things that Mike Brown said on Monday at the luncheon, that now we're kind of in the off season's kind of over. We're kind of trying. And I thought, well, that means they're probably not in full negotiation mode. The team, that they're both sides are pretty far apart, and so he's going to probably try to make a statement, and that's what he's tried to do. I just, again, I don't think the Bengals are going to blink on the guaranteed money. I'm going to guess the Bengals are seeking a 4-year extension where Jamar, and I understand this, he probably wants a 3-year extension so he can dive back into free agency earlier again. And I just don't think that gets done in this window, especially when, Rick, again, you know how things go in life. You work in a deadline business. I work in a deadline. I'm terrible when I have a project hanging over my head. I'm great on deadline. I'm great when there's a sense of urgency to get it done. There's no sense of urgency on either side to get it done. So neither side's going to cave at the moment. They're going to give maybe an inch here and an inch there, but it's not like the 11th hour that if they don't sign Jamar Chase, he's going to walk. And flip side is the same. I mean, he's got 2 more years on a contract. So there's no sense of urgency. And that's where I just don't, it felt like based on what I saw in minicamp and where this thing was going to go from a contract perspective, that he had the possibility to do it. And lo and behold, he has.
You've clearly stated that you don't think this is the case, but how surprised would you be if the Bengals, Jamar Chase, announced a new contract extension within the next week or two? That really they're holding him out right now because they're trying to finalize that.
So it's, I joke with some people on the beat. I said, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to probably be way off base that, maybe they are close. And this is just him saying, hey, until I get this thing finalized, I'm not going to practice. I don't believe that's the case. That's not the vibe I'm getting at all.
That would be a total stunner, I think. I don't see that happening. I've heard a little bit of rumbling, a little bit of joking about maybe that's what's going on here, but I think that would be a complete stunner at this point. All right, second biggest topic, in my opinion, over the last week has been the new locker room reveal. That happened this week. The players got a chance to go in, see the new locker rooms. The media got a chance to go in and get a tour of that. Now, if you remember a few months ago when we were talking about the NFL Players Association report cards, there were a lot of complaints about the locker rooms, the bathrooms within the locker rooms, some of the upgrades that needed to be done. Skinny, you've now had the chance to look at the locker room in person yourself. Take us through the locker room. What was that like?
It's spectacular. We got a photo gallery and some videos up at local12.com. I would suggest take a look at those because it's really, if you're a Bengals fan, it's cool to look at. I mean, I was asked by my boss to take a bunch of pictures so we could put the photo gallery together. And usually I'm not that guy. I don't get, like this is really. I just thought the amenities that they had for that thing were cool. Now you've been in. You were in the old locker room, Rick, and it was nice. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was, a palace, but by locker room standards, it was spacious. It was nice, but it also, the whole not having hot water in the showers is a joke. That shouldn't take place. No phone chargers for players, and it seems like this one they took into account everything they could possibly take into account for the players. There's a phone charger at the wall, and here's some of the pictures you're gonna look at. There's a phone charger. By the wall. There's also the phone charger where you can just lay it down and the phone charges. There's a place where players can put their helmet, and the place that they can put their helmet is has a fan in it, and the fan will dry the helmet out at the end of the day. There's a place where they can put their shoulder pads all the way up at the top of the locker, place down at the bottom where their shoes can all go that actually has a fan that dries the shoes out after you've used them in a practice session. That Paul Brown signature, I think, is a nice little touch. There's the helmet that there's like actually kind of a fan in there that will dry the helmet out after you've used it during the day. And the other part, Rick, is they've got fans that actually circulate the air to send it out. So guess what we didn't have after yesterday's hot, sweaty practice? You didn't have the usual locker room smell.
That's the biggest thing right there. That's really it to me. The stink of the old locker room is really the worst part of it. Now, you said this too on your podcast with Chris Renkel, the little recap you guys did, that it just felt old in the old locker room. And that's the best way I describe it. It looked so outdated. It looked like someone's old boardroom that had kind of been converted over to a locker room. It just didn't feel locker roomish, especially by 2024 standards. And I kind of made the joke on Twitter yesterday, but I was somewhat serious about it. It's like, as great as this Bengals locker room is, and it is more than you would ever need as a professional athlete to play a sport, I started thinking about it like, wait, I feel like as cool as this is, I've seen some pretty impressive stuff in recent locker room reels at the college level. And sure enough, like if you go through any of the top Big Ten, SEC schools or whatever, their locker rooms are even more impressive than what the Bengals just revealed. So it's like, it was time for an upgrade without question.
All right. There's one flaw, and I found it out after practice, and I'm serious about this. So where I told you about in the locker at the very top, there's a pull down where they can put their shoulder pads. The players can put their shoulder pads. And so I'm watching Joe Burrow at his locker trying to reach up. Now, Joe Burrow is 6'4", right? He's not a small guy by any stretch of the imagination. He actually had to get his chair and stand on it to put the shoulder pads in the locker. And I'm like, boy, if that chair like suddenly wobbles or whatever, or he slips and goes down. So I don't know how they're going to rectify that, but by God, they better rectify that.
That can't be right. I mean, we can't have Joe Burrow balancing himself on stools to put his shoulder pads away. I have to assume that just like the players don't know about the button that makes it like mechanically slide down to their level so they can put it in or something. There's no way that's actually a design flaw.
Maybe. I'm going to have to keep watching the next few times I'm in there just to see how it goes. I can't imagine like some of those, smallish wide receivers or a Travion Williams who's about 5'8", 5'9". I don't even know if him standing on a chair will let him reach that thing because Burrow kind of barely reached the thing.
Skinny, I know the sort of old guy take here. Heck, I think even your take might have been to some extent is like, how much does a locker room matter? It's not really what you need or whatever. But everyone who saw this thing seemed to come away with the take that, man, this is pretty nice. It's pretty
Yes.
awesome looking. And I would go a step farther to say, is this the reason that a free agent decides to come to Cincinnati?
I don't.
Absolutely not. No
Right.
one's
Correct.
signing over a
Yeah.
locker room. They want money.
Right.
They want a chance to win.
Yeah.
But there are absolutely things that develop a narrative around your franchise. And the NFLPA report cards are part of this, right? You don't take care of your players. They don't put enough into resources. The amenities aren't as nice. Those things become who you are as a franchise. And it's part of who the Bengals had been through all their years of crappiness throughout the 90s and into the 2000s. And they've started to get away from that. And I feel like this was kind of one of the last parts of that, is upgrading the amenities, upgrading all the things that they provide for the players. So that's no longer part of their narrative. I think that does matter to some extent. It's not the end all be all. It's not going to make the difference for one individual free agent in the offseason. But overall, over the course of 5 to 10 years, and what guys are saying about your place when they go to other teams and when they move around within the league, I think it does have somewhat of an impact.
And honestly, though, don't you also want your players to feel comfortable to a degree, right? I mean, that's a place that they want to be, and that's a group that does like hanging in the locker room. But wouldn't you like to make it as nice as possible for their comfort? And I think you could tell the players really appreciated what they had done. I really believe that. I mean, it's kind of cool mood lighting in there. It has kind of a goofy nightclub feel to it with the lighting, and I don't know if that changes like on a game day if the brightness level is up. It just had a mood lighting when we went in when the players were at practice, and then after when the players were at walkthrough, and then after the full practice when we all went in there to do interviews, the lighting was the same. And I thought maybe the lighting would come up, but I kind of like this little mood lighting. And maybe it's because it was so damn hot outside. The last thing you want to do is jump into bright lights, but it was pretty cool too.
Well, the mood lighting, that's a new thing where it's like, it's not just mood lighting, but it's like put on by movement, right? So like when you walk into it, the little LEDs light up as you go. I've seen that in some of the college things. I do think it looks cool. Now, the one major upgrade is the media guys. Like, the background of the videos now are going to be way better than just that old sort of taupe or khaki colored walls that we always saw in the background. This nicer.
It's funny because so I took a ton of photos on my iPhone, and I got an older iPhone. Those don't always turn out great, but I thought they actually kind of popped for a change, and it didn't pop because of my picture taking skills or the phone itself. I think it popped literally because of the background that I was shooting into.
Yeah, it's all about the lighting without question. So the media content coming out of the locker room, just the player interviews and stuff, that will look more visually appealing without a doubt. All right, our third storyline. How has Joe Burrow looked, and how are they handling his workload to this point? That was the number one storyline coming into training camp, and it kind of got pushed to the back burner a little bit during the course of this first week. But what's been the story with Burrow?
Yeah, he even admitted it after I think his first practice, and we get the chance to talk to him again tomorrow, Thursday, after practice. So I'm interested to see how he thinks the progress is going. He's even admitted it's not spinning the way he would like or the way it has, and you can see that coming off of his hand. It doesn't come off the same. He's had some Joe Burrow like throws yesterday in the 11-on-11. He overthrew T. Higgins. I mean, like as an in route, it went 20 yards over his head. He had another one that short hopped T on a comeback route. He's had a couple that have been behind guys. It doesn't have the same zip on it. But you watch him, he still looks comfortable in decision making, where the ball's going. He's forced some tight window throws that have been accurate. Had a nice one in the back of the end zone on a couple of 7-on-7s. And he did the Joe Burrow thing, I thought, yesterday in a 7-on-7 where he used his eyes and his knowledge of where he was going to go and how he was going to affect the defense with his eyes. So it was down about the 9 or 10 yard line. It was a red zone 7-on-7. And the defense had kind of like they were man-to-man across, and they had a couple of safety help to kind of read in between. So Joe looks into the middle of the field, and I'm looking at it initially because I'm watching his head, and I'm like, man, it's congested in there. All of a sudden, he just casually turns to his left, flips one out to Charlie Jones doing an out route right by the pylon. Easy catch. He strolls into the end zone. I'm like, gosh, that looked easy because he made it look easy. So it's not perfect. It's not where you need to hope it's going to go. I could argue this is why Jamar Chase needs some reps with Joe Burrow right now, because this is a different Joe Burrow at the moment. And maybe in the next week, it's back to the old Joe Burrow. But when he talks about not spinning the way he would like, I think he's still getting a feel for it, how much to push it. I think they've done a good job with his workload. He went the first 2 days last week, had a third scheduled day off. He came out, though, in full uniform helmet, took part in, I think the only drills, he did a little bit of light throwing, but then he did some handoff drills with the running back, which is, as you know, a timing thing sometimes.
Punting too, right?
And he punted. And I think he was horsing around with it. But, I mean, hey, let's not forget, some teams do have their quarterbacks. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger used to do it with Pittsburgh. Occasionally in the shotgun on a fourth down situation from a weird field position spot, you'll have the guy punt the ball away, and there's hopefully no returner back, and you get a chance to pin a team. I mean, I don't think that's what they were doing. I think he was literally just doing it to horse around. But I will say, Darren Simmons, the special teams coordinator, was over there with him the whole time he was doing it, talking to him. So, maybe that's a thing. And then this week, he threw in the Sunday night practice, did not throw a ton in the Monday practice. He did take part some, and that was a pre-planned limited day, and then was a full go yesterday when they went to full pad. So I think the workload's been good. I think he'll say the workload's been good, and he may say tomorrow, I think I'm able to push it a little bit more. Maybe now I'll go. And I will say this, Rick, the first two, tranches of camp, you had 3 days, day off, 3 days. Today, we're recording this day off. And from this point forward, it's 2 days on, day off, 2 days on, day off, 2 days on, day off, games mixed into that. So they don't have any other 3 day periods in camp from this point forward until you get to the end of cuts and towards the regular season, normal week. So I would suspect he may not even get a day off from here on out in camp. Maybe you see a day if something's bugging him that he goes limited, but I think you'll see him go full both days that he goes in each week.
Okay, so those are the 3 big storylines I had from the first week of camp. But there's all those little play-by-play updates, all the things you guys have on your recaps, the day of recaps. So let's just get into this. Which players stood out over the first week of camp? Because there's lots of little individual moments for guys, but if you could just say over the course of the week, there were a couple names that maybe caught your eye, who would those be?
I call it pre-pad and post-pad because everything changes when the pads come on because it's just different. I mean, defensive backs can't get their hands on wide receivers. There's not as much physicality at the point of attack. There's some, but there's not as much. I think pre-pads to me, a couple guys that look good. Obviously, Andre Yoshavash, and I'm not the only one that would say that. He really popped in his role. And I thought DJ Turner played pretty well as a corner. I thought it felt like every day that he had a knockdown or two somewhere along the way. I think he had a moment where he got beat once. I thought Dax Hill had good moments. He had a couple where he got beat once. But then yesterday when they put the pads on, and this is going to probably come off as a negative towards Myles Murphy, but I think it's more of a positive about Amarius Mims. Amarius Mims owned him yesterday. And I mean, there were a couple times, Myles Murphy's not a small dude, right? I mean, he's not a gargantuan guy, but he's not a small guy. There were times where Amarius Mims just enveloped him and just locked him up to the point where he couldn't move. And I'm thinking, okay, again, if he plays Myles Murphy every week, he's going to dominate this league, and he's not. He's going to play better guys than that probably. Although, again, they have high hopes for Myles. They believe Myles is going to be a big part of the defensive end rotation, and I do too. I think I took that as more of a positive on Amarius because, man, oh, man, did he look good yesterday with the pads on.
How could it not be a positive for a rookie lineman who you have to, the first thing that you're questioning about Amarius Mims, and maybe you shouldn't because he's known to be athletic and all that, is like, okay, this mammoth guy, how well is he going to move? Like, are people just going to be running right by him, running past him? Is his footwork going to be off? I mean, it seems like based on all of the reports coming out about him, and especially those reports about him and Myles Murphy, that he had no issue with his footwork, that he had no problem keeping in front. And he was kind of looked like more of the veteran presence that was ready to go. And Myles Murphy was having to counter and try to find a way to keep up with him. That I don't see how that could be seen as anything but incredibly exciting as a Bengal.
Yeah. And he did have a moment with Sam Hubbard on the non-padded day. Again, they do rush the passer. They go pretty full speed, where Sam set him up with a pretty savvy veteran move where he faked to the outside and came back to the inside and beat him. But I went and talked to Sam on Sunday and I said, yeah, you got him with a vet move. He goes, we get each other every once in a while. That doesn't happen to him. I said, no, I said, I just thought it was a pretty savvy move on your part. I said, but what do you think of him having gone against him? He said he's really athletic, and he said he gets his hands on you, man. It's hard to get off. And so, Sam's a pretty honest guy with that kind of stuff. So again, I'd love to see him work more against Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard. But to watch what he did with Myles Murphy was damn impressive.
Yeah, I was listening to Paul and Jay had the comment of, it looked like you're doing really well there against Myles Murphy. He said, yeah, I had some wins and some losses. And Jay commented back, I didn't see any losses.
Right, I didn't either. I saw a loss against Sam Hubbard on a day, but I didn't see any losses yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that's just impressive to hear from a guy that, regardless of what your expectations are from Amarius Mims, even if you thought he was going to come out and start for this team and be good from day one, I still think you have some thoughts of like, this guy didn't get a ton of reps in college.
Right.
He's going to be a little bit raw. It's going to take him a little bit of time to get up to speed. And I'm not saying it still won't, but just hearing those initial reports being like, he looks like the real deal physically. He's handling himself well initially. Getting off to a good first step is a really nice surprise, or maybe not surprise, but a really nice thing to hear as a Bengals fan.
And I truly think now that you've seen this, if the progression continues through preseason and into some preseason games, I honestly think they're more than willing to plug him in there in week one, even if Trent Brown's ready. I do. I mean, he's gotten the opportunity and he's making the most of the opportunity. And meanwhile, Trent Brown just goes and works his 400 pounds off on the side field. So good for you.
Here we go. I talked about that last week. It's coming. Here comes that Trent Brown narrative.
Yep.
Who you talked a little bit about Charlie Jones, and Andre Yoshivach, who has looked good at that third receiver spot.
It's funny. It's kind of a mix and match. It's one, for a chunk, it was Yoshivach, and he did not have a great day yesterday. He had a couple of drops, but again, I'm just going to chalk that up to a day. If it's a pattern, then it becomes something to talk about. And then Charlie Jones hadn't popped until yesterday. He had a couple of really good plays, and I'll be honest, Kendrick Pryor's had a couple of nice red zone reps, and actually played pretty well. Jedrick Jackson's had some moments. They love Hakeem Butler, it seems like, and he had one. He had a couple of really good catches on Sunday. He's the UFL Player of the Year, big bodied wide receiver who's gotten a cup of coffee in the league with a couple of teams. They had an on-air drill where just quarterbacks throwing to receivers, and Jake Browning made a terrible throw to Butler on one, and he had to contort his body and just reached up with a hand and just enveloped the football one-handed like he had a suction cup. So it's a really deep room, and I initially thought they'd only keep 6. And I thought it was a cut and dried 6. It was Chase, Yoshivach, Jermaine Burton, Higgins, Charlie Jones, and Trenton Irwin. And I'm not so sure they don't keep 7 and hope to keep a couple more of those guys around on the practice squad just in case.
The first day of pads is always a fun day. It used to be a little bit more fun, though, going back several years where they do things like the Oklahoma drill, and it was always like a rite of passage for training camp. I'll give you a very brief story. When I was filling in for the Enquirer, doing some Bengals coverage during training camp one year. First day of pads, Oklahoma drill happens. After practice, we all get to talk to Marvin Lewis. And people are asking a little bit of questions about first day of pads and the Oklahoma drill. I muster up the courage to say, did anyone stand out to you or do anything that you liked during the Oklahoma drill? And he looked at me to see who the hell asked that question, saw a face he didn't recognize, and said, nothing that I would share with you. That's a great Marvin Lewis moment.
Very, very Marvin-esque answer right there.
That is Marvin Lewis to a T right there, baby.
Exactly.
Shout out my guy, Jed DeMusi. He loves Marvin Lewis, but he wasn't my biggest fan. All right, let's anything else to get to on training camp, or are we good there?
Yeah, the only other storyline I think is Trey Hendrickson. He practiced the first day, hasn't practiced since. Zach Taylor said it's a minor injury, wouldn't disclose what the injury is, and I'm going to have to take them at their word for that. But, the cynical side of me wonders, is he holding in as well? He sees what Jamar is doing, and maybe he decided, I'm not going to risk injury in this thing either. To hell with that. I'll be ready when I need to be ready.
Now, he's not coming back from any sort of injury, right? Hubbard had the ankle surgery, but
correct.
He's
correct.
Good.
No, Trey practiced full the first day. I don't remember him suffering any. And that's where the cynical side of me goes, he looked and saw Jamar and went, yeah, maybe I'll do this too.
Yeah, if it was Hubbard, I would be more worried about the ankle. Maybe something's wrong there. But with Hendrickson,
he hurt his knee. He's hurt his knee. He hurt his knee on Sunday night and hasn't practiced since. But apparently, the MRI showed it's nothing specific for Sam, and I think he'll be back. But neither he nor Trey took part in yesterday's practice. And again, Trey has not practiced since the first day.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more like maybe potentially another hold-in situation with Trey Hendrickson. But again, that the silliness he pulled already this offseason, it was just like, who cares, buddy? Just like, wake us up when the season starts and you better be playing well.
And I'm kind of with you on that. I don't know what's being served by that other than you're trying not to risk injury. But, for a defensive end who's been in the system, it's not a new defensive coordinator. It's not a new system. He's got basically the same players behind him. He's going to have some players next to him that are going to be different. But for the most part, it's literally, can you line up and go get the passer when you need to go get the passer? He's proven he can do that.
Yeah, he's already proven he's a meathead. So I'm not really worried about what his tactics are here during the offseason and negotiations.
You can always get local stories right here on YouTube. But go ahead and hit that subscribe button to get notifications to stay in the know.